New York's classic rock, Q1043.
I say good morning to Elizabeth Lowe. She's an award-winning filmmaker, and her latest film is getting mucho praise all over the place. And if you love dogs and you love people, this is the movie to see. It is called Stray, and you can get it by virtual cinema. Just go to straymovie.com. And I'm just going to summarize what it's about. You can leave the sound off if you want for this movie, because the only speaking is in Turkish. It's a movie seen through the eyes of three stray dogs who live on the streets of Istanbul. And it's 68 minutes long. And the only words that you need to see are quotes from a Greek philosopher, a dog loving Greek philosopher. But you just, it's not just the movie about the dogs, though, because Stray also incorporates stray people who are living on the streets of Istanbul, Turkey, including a group of Syrian refugee boys. So it's this very poetic film. First of all, how did you ever come up with this idea? And how did you ever pick which dogs to follow? I mean, they're just thousands on the streets there.
Yeah. I think Zeytin, who is the protagonist of the film, she is singular. Like I actually was on a panel with the dog behaviorist, and she said that the way that Zeytin is in front of the camera, she doesn't engage too much with the camera. She really leads you into sort of the cracks and crevices of the city, and fulfills sort of the premise that I set out to make, which was, where would a dog's mind take you? Where does a non-human will lead us, without the imposition of my desires? And she fulfills that in a way that I think many other dogs that we tried to film with and tried to cast in the film, they inadvertently would always end up sort of bonding with us so much that they would end up following us back, and we would have to dictate where to go. So she was just a star in that capacity. And also it was her relationship with the young Syrian men, on and off again relationship, that I found really touching, that there was this sense of home and family that they found in each other, even as the young men were displaced. And I guess what led me to the film was, I had a childhood dog that passed away, and I remember wanting to honor sort of his life, which may seem insignificant because he's a pet and he's a dog and it seems like a mundane life, but I wanted to showcase the lives of beings whose give them narrative, time, and space. And Zeytin ended up being that dog to sort of become the vessel for the richness of all dogs' lives, how rich they can be, especially in Turkey, where they're allowed to roam freely and where they're allowed to live life on their own terms, because because in 2004, people fought for the right of dogs to not be euthanized and to not be held in captivity if they're healthy and stray.
And that policy changed what, in 1909, after a mass killing of dogs? I mean, think of this. It's illegal in Turkey to euthanize or even confine stray dogs. Think of this. Is there any other country that has those dual policies?
No, I think India has a policy where you can't kill them, but this law that's specific to not holding them in captivity, and a further one that's, if you pick them up to vaccinate them, you have to return them to the spot where you found them, which is so radical. Like, how profound is the respect for another being, that they have no deeds to the land, but they're still respected.
But then you also have to worry about them feeding, I mean, they have to eat. And I was just thinking, when just looking at them defecating, in parks, and I'm thinking, oh, in New York City, they'd be calling people, oh my God, you don't have your pooper scooper. I mean, that was going through my mind.
Yeah, surprisingly, when I was there in Istanbul, like, I never noticed poop anywhere. And I think either they have a really good municipal system that cleans up all the poop, or the dogs are also quite disciplined and discreet in where they poop. And in terms of feeding, I would try early on in production, I tried to bribe Zayton, the stray dog, when she was sleeping the whole day and, we were nervous about production, we would try to wake her up with kebabs and stuff, but she wouldn't, because she was able to find such a rich diet in the city on her own that there was nothing we could give her that was better than what she could find on her own. And also it's the people, like butchers, restaurant workers, every morning they came out with so much excess food that they would feed to all the seagulls and the stray cats and stray dogs. So it's a really cultural thing that
But I
these
was thinking
stray
with
dogs-
the feeding, I mean, you have this restaurant owner and he's making this huge tray. And I'm thinking of these boys who are living at construction sites who really could use the food, not just the dogs. I mean, it seemed to me that you might have a better life as a stray dog in Istanbul than a homeless refugee.
I mean, I think for me, what I observed when I was there, people do ask me this question a lot, were the dogs treated better than the people? But to me, actually, compared to the way that Western Europe and North America has shut their borders to refugees in need, I think Turkey, at least in opening their doors to the refugees and allowing them to physically inhabit the streets, even if there isn't adequate art infrastructure to support refugees, that there is a level of mercy there in simply opening your gates to people. And so I think there is a connection in a culture that embraces stray dog populations and has laws protecting them, that while of course being a refugee is really tough and it's all sorts of problematic complications in the relationship between all countries and their refugees. In Turkey, I was struck by how it was never an issue that politicians could leverage to make it so that people would be against refugees or for them. Like basically a lot of people I talked to, I would ask them, how do you feel about, this huge influx of refugees in Turkey? And they would say they're in need and they're our brothers. And that was really remarkable to me. Things maybe have changed, but at the time I was there, at least, there was this attitude of warmth in some way. Like even the passerbys in the film, they're giving them advice like don't do drugs or go back to school when you can. Even
But
if
we
it's
don't know that. We don't know that watching if you don't know the language. We don't. All I was thinking was, what are they trying to get work on this ship? I mean, you really
yeah.
don't know.
But there's subtitles, no?
I didn't. I didn't
Oh
have
no,
that
you
when I was
oh
watching.
no.
So I'm watching without subtitles and thinking,
Oh my God, there's
right, all I
subtitles.
saw were the captions of the
Wait,
philosopher. So I'm
crazy.
thinking, wow, this is really artistic.
No, no,
Oh,
no,
that's
no,
hilarious.
no. Where did you get the link to watch the film?
It was from a publicist. I,
Oh wow, that's something we have to fix.
that's
all,
really, but you see, Elizabeth,
all
I
that
was just thinking
dialogue.
how creative. I was thinking, oh my God, this is one of the most artistic things I've seen, because I'm just thinking in my mind, what is going on here?
Oh
And
my God, it's
and
not
then
that
I'm seeing
radical.
I think that's
I,
hilarious. But you know
I,
what? That's another way of watching the film, because you have a
yeah,
whole other experience.
no. Mm.
Because
That's
then,
something
you
we
know what I was actually
considered.
thinking, Elizabeth? I was thinking, well, I wonder how much of the language the dogs are understanding. It made me go inside their head. And I often think that about my own dog. I mean, we
Yeah.
were told that the average dog can understand as much language as a 2 to 7-year-old, depending on the intelligence of the dog. But my mind actually went there. Let me just tell the audience again who I am speaking with, Elizabeth Lowe. She's an award-winning filmmaker. And her latest movie, Stray, is now available on virtual cinema. Go to straymovie.com. And unlike my experience, you will have you will have the closed captioning, because This is the story of a trio of stray dogs who are living on the streets of Istanbul, Turkey. And also, we see other strays, which are Syrian refugees who are young men who are living in construction sites or dilapidated, abandoned buildings. So, stray actually encompasses the lives of both. I was amazed at this dog who can navigate the traffic. I mean, it was like a dog could cross the FDR highway or the West Side highway. She knew
Yeah.
when to cross
Yeah.
because, I mean, life on the streets, I guess a dog can learn that.
Yeah, no, she was super intelligent. And actually really glad that you got to experience the most avant-garde, most rigorous version of the film, because I did consider maybe, to truly inhabit the dog's view, you don't understand what people are saying verbally, even you're forced to read their body language. So I applaud you for sitting through the film. But yeah, I think she's really a remarkable dog, and she takes you on this sensory voyage because a lot of the film does not have that much dialogue in it. And because it really was attempting to go into this space, into a language that functions beyond words, that's bodily and sensory.
But there was classical music. Whose music was it?
That is Ali Helmwein. He's a really talented composer, and he worked with me along with Ernst Carroll, the sound designer, to distort the tracks so that they would elevate sort of the scenes, the grittiness of the streets.
How long were you working on this?
5 years.
5 years. And then you edited it down to 68 minutes.
72 minutes. Oh my God, I'm seriously wondering what version have you seen? I'm so worried.
It's just hilarious. Okay.
For audience, it should be 72 and it should have subtitles. By minute 10, subtitles should kick in.
Oh. So it must have been really hard to leave this dog. And when you were finished, how did that all work out?
Yeah, I mean, it was bittersweet, but I also knew that the life that she had on the streets of Istanbul was so much better than whatever life any human could provide her in their homes, just because she was so free. And, I tried to put a collar and a leash on her at one point, and she just refused. The moment the string sort of touched her skin, she just froze and stood there and refused to move. She was like, nobody is telling me where to go with a piece of string. And so I think these dogs in Istanbul at least live remarkable and glorious lives, even if they're a little shorter than a normal pet's life, because they don't have the regular vet checkups. Yeah.
How many dogs do they think live on the streets of Istanbul? I mean, they probably
There's
didn't do a count.
There's 130,000 actually.
130,000.
Yeah. It's
Now, do
incredible.
you think that could ever happen in the United States in any way, shape, or form?
I think if it were not for a culture that believes that other species inhabiting our streets is conceived of as a problem, I think it would totally be possible. Because if it can happen in Istanbul, where there's traffic, huge cosmopolitan city, why wouldn't it be possible with the same species in a city like New York? If there was a culture that fed them, that treated dogs with respect, and that if there was a government system in place that took in the unhealthy dogs and healed them.
People would worry about rabid dogs or angry dogs, attacking humans.
But the thing is, as you can see in the film too, like grown men will bring their young children and like push their children into the faces of these gigantic dogs because they have so much trust in the dog's level of sociability, which I found remarkable, because these are the dogs that have survived over decades. And in a way, they're the dogs who are the most emotionally intelligent, the most socially capable, and the most just smart. And so I think if you allowed that to happen in New York or LA, the dogs would be more well socialized than the pet dogs that we see in New York and LA today.
Fascinating. Okay, you can see the movie Stray, virtual cinema, straymovie.com. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Lowe. If you missed any part of this chat, you can download the iHeartRadio app. It is free, and this show lives on as part of the podcast Sunstein Sessions. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning on the Jim Kerr Rock and Roll Morning Show, Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.